This is a sample chapter of a book that is now given freely on Team Success Network's online library of books. It may not be free forever, so feel free to explore the website now and read our books at no charge. We will have hundreds of high-quality Christian books as well as other kinds to benefit a Christian's life. This sample chapter is part of the book called The Ant's Spiritual Blueprint, Book 3. How Creation's Smallest Worker Reveals God's Pattern for a Fruitful Life. Chapter 1, Creation as Teacher. How God's handwriting in nature reveals his heart for wisdom. Learning to hear God's voice through the work of his hands. Creation is God's living classroom. Creation itself preaches. Every mountain, ocean, bird, and breeze carries a whisper of God's mind. Romans 1 verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made." The world around you is more than landscape, it's revelation in motion. Every sunrise testifies to renewal, every seed to hidden potential, and every ant to the miracle of diligence designed by divine wisdom. The ant may be small, but it speaks loudly through example. Its order, persistence, and rhythm are sermons about endurance, purpose, and faithfulness. It doesn't need an audience, it simply fulfills its design. That's what wisdom looks like in motion, doing what's right because it's right, not because someone is watching. When you go to the ant, as Proverbs 6 verse 6 instructs, you step into God's classroom of creation, where life becomes the chalkboard and faith the pen. God never wastes design. Everything he made carries a principle that mirrors his nature. The rivers reflect his constancy, the stars his order, and the ant his patience. Nature is not silent, it's worship in motion, declaring truths about balance, timing, and trust. The more you study creation, the more you realize that it operates not by chance, but by covenant. The laws of the earth were written by the same God who wrote the laws of life. When you begin to see creation as teacher, you move from living reactively to living reflectively. You start noticing divine fingerprints in places you once ignored. The world becomes alive with lessons. Each leaf, grain, and cloud testifying that wisdom is woven into everything God made. The ant in the language of obedience. The ant doesn't need words to teach, it lives the lesson. Its entire existence is a pattern of disciplined obedience. It doesn't question why or when, it simply acts according to its design. The same God who programmed its instincts wrote his spirit into your heart, teaching you how to walk faithfully without fear. Proverbs 6 verse 6 to 8 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise." It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. The ant moves instinctively in rhythm with God's order. It doesn't wait for motivation. It moves from conviction. It knows that obedience now creates peace later. This same truth applies spiritually. The wisdom you practice today becomes the stability you stand on tomorrow. Creation functions perfectly because it obeys God's order without resistance. The sun rises without debate. The tide shifts without complaint. Only humanity struggles to yield, yet we are the ones made in his image. The ant reminds us that greatness doesn't require size. It requires surrender. When you obey like creation does, your life regains rhythm. You stop wrestling with every instruction and start flowing with divine timing. The ant's obedience is a quiet reflection of what God desires from his children. Faithful action without argument. Every act of simple obedience positions you for supernatural results. Seeing God in the ordinary. Learning from creation requires humility. It means slowing down enough to see meaning where others see monotony. The ant crawling along the dirt is not random. It's a moving sermon on purpose. It's easy to miss God's wisdom when life feels familiar, but the secret of the wise is that they notice him everywhere. Psalm 19 verse 1 to 2 declares, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge." The world around you never stops speaking about God. The question is, are you listening? The ant's motion, the tree's growth, the bird's song, All are daily broadcasts of divine intelligence. To see God in the ordinary is to see holiness in the simple. The ant doesn't wait for a platform or miracle, it just fulfills purpose in its small corner of creation. That's what spiritual maturity looks like. Faithfulness in the unnoticed. When you start seeing God's glory in the routine, every moment becomes sacred, and every task becomes an opportunity to glorify Him. God's design teaches through repetition. The rising sun reminds you of resurrection. The flowing river teaches you about renewal. The diligent ant shows you that consistency is a form of worship. Nature is not random, it's rhythmic, and in its rhythm you find revelation, the hidden curriculum of creation. Creation doesn't argue, it agrees, it doesn't resist its boundaries, it thrives within them. Every ecosystem functions through balance, a living expression of how wisdom works. Order sustains life. The ant never overreaches. It simply does what's appointed for it to do. This quiet balance holds the key to peace. Isaiah 55 verse 12 says, "You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you." Everything God made carries a song of submission, a harmony of obedience that glorifies Him. When you observe creation, you're witnessing worship. The ant, though voiceless, moves in a rhythm that praises the Creator through faithfulness. This is the hidden curriculum of creation. Purpose is found in alignment, not ambition. The world runs not by competition, but by cooperation. The soil feeds the seed feeds the creature feeds the soil again. Everything circles back to purpose fulfilled. The ant thrives in this ecosystem because it knows its role and plays it well. Wisdom means learning to live within divine order. The ant doesn't waste energy comparing itself to the bee or bird. It simply does its part. When you stop striving to be someone else and start obeying God in your own assignment, your life gains power and peace. God's voice through nature. Nature speaks a language beyond words. You can't hear it with your ears, you hear it with your heart. Psalm 8 verse 3-4 says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them?" God uses creation to remind humanity of perspective, how small we are, yet how deeply loved. The ant's entire world fits under your feet, yet it operates with diligence that shames human apathy. Its faithfulness reveals your calling to live responsibly before God. Every time you watch it gather, build, or cooperate, you're seeing a parable of spiritual maturity. Do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. Nature's voice also corrects pride. When you recognize that the same God who manages galaxies manages ants, humility returns. Creation humbles the heart by showing order far beyond human control. The winds obey His voice, the oceans stop at His command. The ant obeys his instinct and thrives. Hearing God through nature brings peace. The moment you slow down to observe His patterns, anxiety loses its grip. The same God who designed the ant's path has designed your purpose. If His hand governs creation so perfectly, surely His hand can guide your life. Learning humility through observation. To learn from creation, you must become teachable again. Modern life trains people to overlook the simple, to chase what's loud and impressive. But wisdom often whispers from the unnoticed corners of the world. The ant's steady persistence shows that humility and greatness always walk together. Jesus often taught from nature, the lilies of the field, the sparrows in the sky, the mustard seed in the soil. Why? Because creation speaks God's language without distortion. The ant's humility is its strength. It stays low but builds deep. Those who humble themselves before God find that wisdom begins where pride ends. Observation is a form of worship. When you look at creation with reverence, you acknowledge the Creator's genius. The ant's design reveals divine efficiency, strong enough to carry 50 times its weight, disciplined enough to cooperate without conflict, wise enough to plan ahead. None of this happened by accident. It happened by assignment. God's lessons are never locked in temples. They're spread throughout creation. The field becomes a pulpit, the ant a preacher, and every moment an invitation to listen. The more you observe, the more you understand everything created has a purpose, and so do you. The discipline of paying attention. Wisdom begins with attention. The reason the ant teaches so much is because it lives in constant awareness of its environment. It knows when to gather, when to move, when to rest. This attentiveness protects it from destruction. In the same way, God calls his people to live awake, not distracted by noise, but tuned to his rhythm. Ephesians 5 verse 14 to 15 says, "Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. The ant doesn't drift, it directs. Wisdom watches carefully for God's timing. Paying attention is not passive, it's active discernment. The ant doesn't move because everyone else does, it moves when it should. That's what spiritual maturity looks like, staying in step with God's will instead of reacting to the world. The more you observe his design, the less likely you are to miss his direction. When you train your heart to pay attention, small things start revealing big truths. You begin to sense God's hand in every detail. The ant's motion, the breeze in the trees, the changing of seasons, all become divine messages reminding you God is always at work and wisdom is always available. Creation's call to worship. The world is not just functional, it's worshipful. Every part of creation fulfills its purpose without complaint. The ant's labor, though small, becomes an act of praise to its maker. That's why Proverbs calls us to consider its ways, because what the ant does naturally, we must choose spiritually. Creation glorifies God by doing what it was made to do. When the sun shines, it glorifies him. When the ant gathers, it glorifies him. When you live faithfully in your purpose, you join the same symphony of worship. That's the beauty of divine design. Everything plays its part in the harmony of heaven. Psalm 148 verse 3 to 5 commands, "Praise him, sun and moon. Praise him, all you shining stars. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for at his command they were created." Even the smallest creature fulfills this command simply by existing in obedience. To worship like creation means to live with surrender. The ant never rebels against its nature, it fulfills it daily. When you live in obedience to your calling, your life becomes worship, your labor becomes praise, and your rhythm becomes divine. Applying the lesson of the ant, learning from the ant, is more than admiration. It's application. The ant's diligence, humility, and order are patterns for daily living. God calls you not just to watch creation, but to imitate its wisdom. When you see the ant's consistency, you're seeing what faith looks like in action. To live with the wisdom of the ant means to work consistently, even when unseen, prepare wisely, trusting future fruit to today's effort, serve humbly, valuing your part in God's plan, live orderly, keeping your steps aligned with divine purpose, stay teachable. Always learning from what God reveals through creation. Every spiritual truth God speaks through creation is meant to shape your habits. The ant's perseverance teaches endurance. Its preparation teaches foresight. Its unity teaches love. Each observation becomes instruction for godly living. The ant's life is proof that simplicity can hold profound truth. You don't need complexity to find revelation. You need consistency in listening. The more you learn from creation, the more you resemble the Creator. Key truth: creation isn't random, it's revelation. The ant's diligence, order, and quiet faithfulness reveal the mind of God to anyone willing to notice. Wisdom isn't always found in the extraordinary, it's hidden in the ordinary. God speaks through what He made so that no one can miss His message. Life works best when it follows His design. Summary: the ant is more than an insect, it's a divine instructor. Through it, God teaches perseverance, preparation, humility, and harmony with His order. Creation itself becomes a spiritual mentor, guiding those humble enough to listen. When you observe creation as teacher, you rediscover rhythm, gratitude, and peace. You see that God's wisdom is everywhere, waiting in the small and the still. The ant's life calls you back to simplicity. Faith expressed through action, diligence born of devotion, and obedience offered in silence. To consider the ways of the ant is to rediscover the ways of God. Creation isn't just telling a story, it's inviting you into one. Learn from what He made, and you'll find that the same wisdom that guides the ant will guide your life into divine purpose and lasting peace. Thank you for listening to the first chapter of this book. We are happy to share it with you. The purpose of creating this chapter on audio is to let you get a feel for what this book is about. These books are offered free for now online, and you can read them all directly on our website. They may not always be free, so read them today, teamsuccessnetwork.com. God bless you, and please check out all of our titles.